So, many of you have already spent some time learning about the MBET program. Some of you, that might not be the case. So this presentation is by no means an exhaustive presentation about all the information you might want to know about the MBET program, but is a good sort of starter or introduction to the MBET program for those who are unfamiliar. If this is your first webinar with us, I'm strongly going to encourage you to check out some of our other webinars, including previously recorded webinars. There's a 1-hour presentation all about the details of the part-time program. And if you were looking for more information about course curriculum, logistics of applying, admissions requirements, and things like that, then that is something you'll definitely want to check out. As mentioned, I'm going to provide a brief overview, and then we're going to spend the majority of our time speaking to our students. As I also mentioned, you're disabled. Enter your your questions in the Zoom question panel at any time, and let's get going. So the Master of Business, Entrepreneurship and Technology, or MBET program, is essentially a program for people who want to make things happen. And that statement of making things happen, what we're talking about is really the spirit of entrepreneurship. And when we say spirit of entrepreneurship, we mean people who don't wait for things to happen to them, rather people who go out and make things happen, people who see opportunities and create, disrupt, innovate, and otherwise bring things into existence that never happened, that never existed before. It's a unique program in that it is designed by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. And what we mean by that is that our faculty, many of them are either currently operating their own ventures or have built and sold ventures in the past. And also, I'm speaking to the consultation that we've made with the entrepreneurial community around the kind of entrepreneurial business skills that are needed in the world of entrepreneurship and startups. And essentially what we teach you is how do you take an idea and turn that into a viable business opportunity. It is essentially the commercialization process, and the commercialization process really forms kind of the backbone for the program curriculum and focus for the overall program. We use a problem-solving framework for this. It's no coincidence that we're a part of the Faculty of Engineering here at the University of Waterloo. Engineering, of course, being very orientated towards problem-solving, and our course makes no exception to that perspective. And so for us, entrepreneurship also means being adept at identifying problems and creating and validated solutions for those problems. So you're going to learn a lot about problem solving as it relates to the commercialization process and building new business ideas and ventures as well. We are very privileged to be located here in the Toronto-Waterloo corridor, where there is a tremendous amount of entrepreneurial activity. So aside from everything that you get to do within the classroom, there are innumerable opportunities for you that exist within this very vibrant innovation corridor. On this slide, you'll note probably a few companies, brands that you recognize, global brands who have chosen the Toronto-Waterloo corridor for their Canadian or North American headquarters, as well as many Waterloo region born and raised companies like BlackBerry, like Shopify, like D2L, and perhaps you've even noticed companies like ClearPath Robotics, which was actually founded by a full-time MBET alumni. With well over 15,000 technology companies, 200,000 technology workers, and 5,200 tech startups, I can personally attest to this vibrancy, having worked in the sector myself for many years. The opportunities are really just phenomenal. We are located here at the Conrad School of Entrepreneurship in Canada's most innovative university. Part of why the Waterloo region has become the center for startup and technology activity that it is because of the University of Waterloo. And part of what makes the University of Waterloo unique is our intellectual property policy. We have a creator-owned policy here at U Waterloo, which means that whatever you create while you're studying, you're going to retain 100% ownership of that. And in fact, that policy even extends to our faculty. And as a result, we are able to attract some of the world's best and brightest minds and entrepreneurial students and faculty because they know they're going to retain ownership of that intellectual property that they create. Might not sound like a particularly unique thing, but in fact, in the world of higher education, it is. For many universities, intellectual property is part of the way that they generate revenue, and that's not the case here at Waterloo. We have been named Canada's most innovative university for the past 28 years. #1 in Canada for career preparation, #1 in Canada for hands-on experiential learning, and I've highlighted experiential learning because that's really a key aspect of the MBET program, and I'll talk about that in a moment. #1 school in Canada for venture-backed capital enterprises. So if we think about all the different new ventures that are coming out of Canadian schools, #1 in terms of ventures that are securing venture capital to take those companies to market. At the time of this pitch book publication, where we grabbed these stats, 433 University of Waterloo founders had raised a total of $10.6 billion. And a really interesting stat here that comes to us from the Impact Center at the University of Toronto is that 18.6% of Canadian technology founders, or nearly twice as many technology founders, come from the University of Waterloo versus other schools. So sharing this with you just to give you a sense of the sort of gravitas, the caliber of entrepreneurs that are educated here at the University of Waterloo, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem and community that you have the opportunity to get involved with through the MBET program. MBET is a unique opportunity for you to build a venture and get a master's business degree from Canada's most innovative university at the same time. It's a practical course-based professional master's degree. There are 10 courses, no electives. Again, it's course-based, so there's no thesis or research component. You get to work with world-class entrepreneurial faculty, as I mentioned. Many of them currently operate their own businesses or have built and sold businesses in the past. And so when you're learning from our faculty, you're not just learning about entrepreneurship and business from an academic perspective, you're learning about real-world experiences and using real examples. Plenty of opportunities for you to network, both formally through the program and informally through the many opportunities here in the Waterloo region and the Greater Toronto Waterloo corridor. We've got a great organization here in Kitchener, for example, called Communitech. They're our technology association, hundreds, if not thousands of company members there. They have, even amidst this pandemic, virtualized many of their networking opportunities, so their peer-to-peer groups. Still lots of ways to get connected and build a network online here. In addition to those core courses, we provide practical workshops in things like sales, consulting, in customer experience design, so that you can augment your degree with practical skills that you can apply right away. And that may also be a great way for you to find an advisor and mentor. Often this takes the form of our faculty. In fact, many full-time MBET grads that are continuing to work on their venture after graduation continue to enjoy advisory and consulting support from our faculty. You know, in MBET, it's a pretty small cohort, a relatively small program, and we like it that way because it means we get to have a higher touch experience with you, and we really have the ability and capacity to be invested in your success. And so if you're looking for advisement or mentorship support from our faculty or outside of the faculty, we're going to help you get there, and this is a great place to do that. Last, and certainly not least, experiential learning. You know, at the onset of our program, we heard a lot of people say that you can't teach entrepreneurship, and we completely disagree. There's a lot that we can teach you, certainly a lot of academic research around the subject that we can share with you, but indeed, entrepreneurship is something that you have to do. Remember, MBET is for people who want to make things happen. So you need to have opportunities to make things happen, and that happens throughout the program. Experiential learning and practical application of what you learn on the program is a key focus of ours. So specifically, what those experiences look like is BET 608, Market Validation. This is a course where you're going to learn techniques for conducting market analysis and market research and analysis to validate go-to-market strategies. And once you've learned that in the classroom, you're going to end up pairing yourself with an early stage startup somewhere here in the Toronto Waterloo corridor to help them validate their strategies. So work directly with a new startup founder. You're going to take their existing data, conduct additional research, and prepare essentially a report with a series of recommendations for them. You know, hey, you're on the right track, or you missed this opportunity, or maybe you've totally missed the mark. Whatever it is, the point is you're working with a real company, working with real founders. It's not just a sort of a case study. It's the real world. Things can get a little bit dirty, and it really is an opportunity to kind of experience applying what you're learning in the classroom directly in the real world right away. BET 604, Venture Creation, is arguably at the heart of the program. This is a course you're going to work on throughout the entire duration of the 3-year part-time program. This is where you're going to work on building your own venture. Whether or not you have your own venture coming into the program or not is irrelevant, and also irrelevant is whether or not you continue to work on that venture after graduation. The point here is that it is both an opportunity to build a venture and to engage in the pedagogy of venture building, to actually experience venture creation for yourself. And last but certainly not least, BET 615 is corporate innovation and consulting. You're going to take what you've learned in working with somebody else's startup, working on your own startup, and apply it in a larger corporate context. So we will teach you techniques and strategies for corporate innovation and consulting, and then you'll be paired with a enterprise organization to work on a real project to help them commercialize an idea, to innovate, and otherwise bring new ideas to market for that organization. So I'm looking at the time and realizing that I have been blabbing longer than I planned. Without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we're going to get into our guests. So thrilled to have all current part-time MBET students with us today. And I'm going to get them each to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Grace.
Hi everyone, so I'm Grace. A little bit of back history about me is I have a degree in public relations from Conestoga College, and I was out of school for about 3 weeks and decided to take my master's. I was at the time working at UW, just fell in love with the MBET program, just everything that they were doing. I also have a very entrepreneurial background. When I was in second year of my undergrad, I actually started doing a project and turning it into a business, and I now actually still operate doing events and marketing consulting on the side, and I have a full-time contract where I manage a soccer academy doing their marketing communications. And I'm actually now working in the private sector doing aesthetic events and marketing for Clarion Medical Technology, so lots of fun things going on for me.
Great, thanks Grace. And next, if I could ask Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Brunsma. So I am a part-time MBET student graduating in 2021. My previous degrees include, so I graduated from Waterloo. I studied mechanical engineering. Prior to that, I went to Conestoga College and I studied as an automotive service technician, so I have a trade background. I work for the University of Waterloo, and I would do industry engagement for the Faculty of Engineering. And because of COVID, I've had to pivot on what I was working on. And so now I am working on something that I've toyed with on a social side, which is a initiative that I call Miss Mechanic. But it's making mechanic knowledge more available to a wider population so that you as a consumer can make better decisions about your vehicle.
Thanks, Stephanie. Stephen.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Zhang, and I have my education. Previously, I started in accounting back in China. When I graduated, I worked in Hong Kong and Macau as in a large construction company. And in 2015, I moved to Canada. My previous company was doing a lot of developing in real estate and as well as the senior living. Nowadays, I quit my job last year, and I'm nowadays working as a broker in a financial institution. And nowadays, and I'm working with some of my friends, and we are figuring during this time see whether there's opportunity for startups. So that's almost my plan.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Vlad.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vlad Luchnok, and I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And then I also did a master's degree in public policy and administration before starting the MBET program. Like Stephanie, I also work at the University of Waterloo. I work at the Office of Research as a manager of corporate research partnerships. And in that role, I work with professors and companies to match interests for the purpose of collaborative research and commercialization projects. And I focus on a number of different faculties and industry sectors. and helping identify suitable government funding for companies to leverage and facilitate agreements, contracts, and project proposals as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, KP.
Hey everyone, my name is KP Anand. I'm also a graduate from the University of Waterloo. This will be now my second time through the MBET. I worked at Waterloo for about 12 years in various roles within athletics and recreation, but also in business development within the Office of Development before switching over to Laurier a couple of years ago. And now currently I'm the Associate Director of Business Operations for the Golden Hawks. So what that entails is marketing, communications, finance, IT, facilities and logistical operations, and as well as looking at taking care of some of our satellite campuses like Brantford and Toronto and their athletic portfolios. What attracted me to this program was just being hands-on and getting that knowledge firsthand. In the world of athletics and recreation, you have to be a go-getter. And I think this further amplified my skills in being here, but happy to answer any questions you have.
Awesome, thank you. So I just want to remind all of our participants, please use the chat window to type your questions for any of our guests. You can type in general questions. If you have questions for specific guests, you can direct them at specific guests. That's great. I'm going to read those questions to our guests. I have a few questions to get us started. These are common questions that have come up when, in the past when we've invited guests to participate in sessions like this, guest students. So I'm going to throw out a question actually to Stephen. Before you chose the MBET program, did you look at any other programs? If so, what programs did you look at and what made you decide to go with the MBET program?
Yes, for me, I think that because I started in the business and I want to have a local degree for myself, I'm right. So I want to see that what type of the degree available on the market, because I do not live in Waterloo area. I live in Richmond Hill, and it's pretty far from Waterloo area. But I started several universities, such like York. York is the most close one to me. University of Toronto, and even Ivy, the University of Western. All this kind of program. I see that most of them program they provided is more like for MBA, I mean, of business administration. And I feel like that I look at that and I think that, okay, because I started in business in a traditional way, and but MBET attracts me a lot because of its kind of entrepreneurship. It's very into with the program itself. Is more like for MBA is like the program is designed for you to train manager of kind of position in a company. It's more like for me it's like, okay, it's like a job, and it seems like you are working for someone, you are trained to work for someone. And I think after it's about 2 years ago, I listened to the same session like you guys, and I feel like that. Okay, so MBET is more, I realized that MBET is more a program designed for you to build up a company. It's like more like you work for yourself, or even you hire someone else to work for you. And I think I like this idea because nowadays, and also MBET involved a lot with it comes with business, entrepreneurship, and technology. And during my experience and my observation, the technology is getting more and more it's important than in our life. And I realized that MBET seems like it's kind of trend of our society. Just like my previous job is a huge company, but it's also faced the challenge of the technology. I think, okay, why I have a try on this? And nowadays I'm at the second year of my program. I think that, I think I like my decision made by myself. I think that it's pretty interesting that I feel like MBET has some hard knowledge, such as the accounting, marketing, some hard knowledge you will experience in the traditional business school, but also it has some unique features, such like that 600, 608, they're providing, the program is designed specific for the startups. Working in a company and starting your own company is a totally different story. I really like that the program is being designed that way, and I think that it's interesting. You know how others works. Previously, you might never thinking about starting your own business, or you think it's too hard, or it's totally different way. But nowadays, it's like okay, yeah, it's doable, it's achievable, and there's a lot of resources, but you just never see it, right? There are velocity, a lot of incubators, accelerators, these lot of things here. And I met with Pam during the trip last year to San Francisco, and it was very enjoying. And if you come to the program and you do this, like no matter full-time or part-time, you will have opportunity to have a trip there. It will be interesting. You will see a lot of people sitting there. So you know that when I was at San Francisco, Zoom just get IPO. So at that time, I knew Zoom already. Nowadays, you guys are all living on the Zoom. But at that time, I know Zoom already, because that time, during that week, Zoom get listed. And I found it interesting. So at that time, Zoom is nothing. No one knows this. A little people know this, but you see that this type of technology just boom. And we actually went to Cisco. Zoom was started at Cisco before. And because the Cisco didn't want to restart the program, and so Eric Yuan come out from Cisco and started the Zoom. So it's funny, right? Look at the technology, how the technology changed our lives. So I really like MBET program, and it explore a lot of opportunity for me, and it helped me to see all kinds of opportunity around this kind of industry.
Thanks, Stephen. Just for the benefit of the audience, I want to just a couple things. One, there are going to be all kinds of things that are going to happen throughout the MBET program that happen outside the classroom. Historically, we've booked trips to Silicon Valley and open that up to our students to participate in as like an additional activity. So that's just the trip that Stephen is referring to there. Thank you. I really appreciate that, and also talking about kind of some of the difference between an MBA and an MBET. I have a specific question for both Stephanie and Grace here from our participants. So Stephanie, I'll throw it over to you, and then Grace. And the question is, how do you balance working for U of W as well as doing your MBET? Do you think it helped or hindered your experience?
Well, I'm not going to say it's not difficult. And added to that pile, I will mention I have a 10-year-old at home. So now I'm homeschooling as well. But for me, I am an integrator. So I have no problem taking work and life and like making them mash together. And I'm able to do that with MBET. The job that I have aligns well with MBET. And I take things immediately from the classroom, and I'm able to apply them with what I do, and I apply them in a way that I wouldn't have been able to before. It's actually added a lot of value to my job, which I'm really thankful for. But again, like for me personally, I couldn't do it if I had to isolate the two. The fact that I can blend the two makes it a lot easier. And I've brought my son to campus before. He's sit on the couch when I've done these events in live form. So the staff at Conrad is pretty darn flexible and understanding. And they work with adults doing many different things. And the instructors have been pretty good too about if there's any issues that come up. And I will say, with the current situation with COVID, it's made it a lot more difficult working from home and doing all that. But the program and the instructors have been really on board with listening to our issues with that and adjusting as needed.
Grace, what's your experience been?
So my experience is a little bit different. I did start at St. Paul's University College for Greenhouse, which is a community for young students that want to do social or environmental change with the entrepreneurial lens. Being what we considered a partner to Conrad, it really did help taking the program. I was able to make so many more connections and it really helped in my role. 8 months later, moving into the private sphere, I no longer had that kind of backing and support, and my job became very much more demanding and I became a lot busier. So I found it a lot more difficult with that transition. Really what it came down to is you just really need to be organized, stay on top of everything, and communicate with your professors with what's going on if you need extra support. And they're very understanding. That was really kind of a saving grace, I guess you would say, for me in this program. Without that, I don't think I would have been able to manage everything. So the one thing is the professors are excellent. They are down to earth, they're very understanding, and they will work with you to make sure that you're successful.
Question came up here, and Steve responded to it actually as well. Do you need to already have an entrepreneurial idea that you want to build before starting the program, or are there students who want to start the program hoping to learn and develop their skills before having a specific idea path? So I'm going to answer the question really quickly by saying no, you don't have to. Anecdotally, on average, about 50% of our students come in with some semblance of an idea. But I'm curious to ask the folks here, for BET 604 Venture Creation, you knew you were going into a course where you were going to create a new startup. Did you have an idea or a problem space or a market that you were interested in? What was that like? I'll throw it over to you, KP, first.
I guess so. The simple answer to that question is no. You don't have to have an idea. Did many of us have ideas coming in? Yes, but part of learning through this program is you don't know everything, and that idea may not be feasible. I'm happy to share that one of the ideas that I had very early on was a system that would calculate nutritional values in a day just by going to use the washroom. And it was completely not feasible because it's not something that you can do. It's a good idea, but not anything that you can do. I think you come into this, and if you come into this and have an idea, there are some ideas that will fruition, and you can work through the problems, and the Conrad team will help you through them. But if you don't have an idea, you're going to get lots of ideas as you start to run through this course.
What about you, Vlad? Did you have something coming in?
Personally, I didn't. And I think what was good is that the courses, the frameworks, the theories that we learned helped us then develop certain ideas and actually execute some sort of venture ideas that we wanted to pursue. A lot of us have pivoted. So in the first year, we had a great idea. We started doing some primary research, and then we realized it wasn't feasible. We shifted to a different idea and continued working on that. But I also think that the MBET program, and I think it was BET 608, that provided us an opportunity to work with startups as part of the course, to learn to conduct opportunity assessments for them and marketing assessments as well. So by working with local startups and even working with your classmates, you sometimes even partner up and try and identify another segment of that startup, something that they haven't explored, and doing the primary and secondary research to see, is that another opportunity that they can pursue, and work with them on that front. But for me, it was, I came into the program with an open mind and really wanting to learn the courses and the skills that they provided, so that then I can come up with an idea and work with it. And currently right now, I'm working with a local startup that's looking at virtual reality and augmented reality solutions for energy companies, so that when employees are being trained, they use a VR technology, and that technology and platform can monitor the performance of those employees. If they're performing a certain task at a very risky, at a hazardous level, or if they're performing it at the top of their abilities. So one of the things that I've been doing is connecting with colleges and hydro companies to see if this is a type of technology that we could actually leverage and they can use for their training purposes.
Grace, did you start your business while you were in MBET, or?
No, I started my business second year of my undergrad. It's not actually the venture that I'm going to do full time. But coming in, I didn't have an idea for MBET, and I've kind of changed already in the first year a couple times already. So you definitely do pivot, and I think you do find with research really quickly whether or not your idea is feasible or not, but sometimes you need that other person to come in and say, let it go. It's not going to work. Like, you would love the idea, but it's time to move on and do some more research into other directions. So
I just want to address one question that's just come in that's more of a logistics question. Can you start on a full-time basis and then change it to part-time or vice versa? So it's important to remember that MBET's a highly collegial program. Students in the program kind of work, collegial and collaborative. Students in a cohort move through the program together. We don't have continuous intake. There's only one intake. So basically a class starts together and they finish together. And because of that collegial and collaborative nature, it doesn't lend itself well to flexibility to change between formats. So the guideline is if you start full-time and decide to go to part-time, we can do that. You cannot go from part-time to full-time, and the reason is by the time part-time has started, the full-time class has already completed 3 weeks. And it's just too much to catch up on. So I know this can sometimes be a challenging decision, full or part-time. My general advice is if you have a good job that you're reasonably satisfied in right now, that you're supported in, and is, you know, providing for you and others who you may be responsible for providing for, and there isn't a sense of urgency around this, then go part-time. We designed it so that you have a longer runway, you can balance work, life, school, and everything else while you pursue this degree. However, if you are not employed and you have the means to study full-time, I would certainly encourage that as well. It's a rather different experience. The full-time can be pretty intense. It's a lot in one year, but if you don't sort of have those other obligations and you have that opportunity, then I would say go for it. Okay, back to questions for our guests. Curious about what you thought about entrepreneurship before taking MBET and what you think about entrepreneurship after taking MBET. And I'm gonna throw this one to Stephen. What were your sort of like perceptions of entrepreneurship before MBET, and now that you're in it, what does entrepreneurship mean to you?
Yeah, I think that before I never thought about before MBA, I never thought about the concept about starting your business or something like that. Or I think that is pretty far because, you know, I have a background in accounting. That, you know, accounting, what doing accounting is starting in the history about what's the performance. We rarely thinking about the future or start your own stuff. It's more like, okay, and also my parents work for companies and work for hospitals. They always teach me saying that, okay, when you grow up, you find you look for good jobs and you work for the rest, and you want to maybe become a manager, become or doctor, or become a lawyer, become an accountant. They never think about, okay, start your business. And nowadays, I think that, yeah, after I get involved with MBET, I think that it's more like, you know, you previously think, okay, this is something you know it exists, but you never think making any connection between entrepreneurship and yourself. It's more like, okay, I know a lot of people making tons of money by starting their own business, or they achieve a lot of things, but you never think about this. And but the MBET is more like they help you to understand what is entrepreneurship, and they tell you that a lot of story about, no matter the story or actually the truth, they teach you, saying that it's actually not that far from you. And when you grow up, you think that people already being success businessmen, it's already been there, but actually if you really the backstory of them, they didn't start as great. The entrepreneurship is not saying that you have a lot of stuffs and you combine them together and you become a huge company. It's actually you have nothing and you have maybe maybe an idea, a concept. You just see a problem you want to solve it. And the entrepreneurship is that it doesn't mean that you need to have a lot of stuff. sometimes it's more like process, like I don't know whether you some process like I would like use a metaphor like your survival in a jungle. Maybe just with one knife and one match, and you do whatever to survive, and you do whatever to develop yourself. And it's a journey. It's not something. It's not a degree. It's not a title. It's actually a process. Entrepreneurship is more like you love these things. You really think you do this, and you think that yeah, I want to achieve this. It's more something like from inside, not from outside. If you think you are an entrepreneur, if you want to build up something big for you, for your family, and you are an entrepreneur, and you want to deliver this by your practice. And I think that is the entrepreneur nowadays for me. Previously, I think that this is some just a crazy businessman. Nowadays, I think that is something that you can do.
Thanks, Stephen. What about you, Vlad? Did your perceptions of entrepreneurship change at all from being in the program?
It did. It really made me understand the complexities and challenges sometimes entrepreneurs face when they want to start from scratch and build up a venture that they can then carry on to the next stages. And for me, it was always, I probably had a very narrow view of entrepreneurship in the past of, you need a lot of startup capital, and then, you hire some people, and then you start to kind of develop a marketing strategy and you build out a business. But really, once, throughout the MBET, really realizing what problem is you're trying to solve. And I think for the MBETs, those words, ring a bell quite nicely. I know those are words that get repeated to us a number of times, but it's really trying to figure out, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and how are you going to go on about solving it, right? Through research and through other, various frameworks and topics that we learn throughout the courses, to really see how difficult it is sometimes to start a successful venture. And I think that that's where, working with the local startup community, working with my classmates on these various projects, whether it's accounting, finance, new venture startup creation, I think it's been a really good experience. And it really has changed my perception as to what entrepreneurship means. But I think it also is, the program itself has really given me the skills and the knowledge of, how to speak the same language as industry. Like in my role right now, I connect with companies that are interested in R&D projects, and sometimes they're in the startup phase, sometimes they're Fortune 500. And for me, when they're explaining some of their challenges that they're experiencing and that they want to solve some of these challenges, it really brings me back to the MBET program and seeing, okay, did they really sometimes go through some of these steps that entrepreneurs go through to solve a particular problem? Or are they maybe thinking of pivoting, which is why they want to engage in a research project, for example? So I think the program has given me that ability to speak the same language as companies and kind of converse with them on that level as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, questions. KP, you talked earlier about being in athletics and having to essentially be able to hustle. You need to be able to move quickly and that sort of thing. I'm wondering, if you're, have you been able to apply what you've been learning in MBET to your job? Have you been able to leverage it in your day-to-day?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, my portfolio is quite vast, and you focus on finances and budgeting and what have you. But until you've gone through a proper accounting course, you kind of get by. I mean, my degrees were not in finance. I've done biomed and legal studies, and they're not close to that. But I think what it really allows you to do is think critically, more critically than you would generally in your life or within your position. Applying that knowledge, as Vlad mentioned, the whole, what problem are you trying to solve? Why are you even bothering with it, right? And I think those are the kind of things that you really need to ask yourself daily within your role. I am an entrepreneur by every standard. I've always thought of myself that way, and I've owned and sold many businesses over the years. But it would be foolish for me to consider that I wouldn't have learned anything new as an entrepreneur. And hustling, I mean, you kind of outlined it at the beginning, hustling and always being on the go and really critically thinking. I mean, it's one thing to be reactive, but this also allows you to be proactive in a way where you're not overthinking things. And I think that's been really, really important for me.
Anyone else have a story? Like Stephanie, I know that your job changed a bit from when you started. You talked a bit about being able to use what you're learning in the classroom in your job. Can you speak to that at all about the impact MBETs had for you professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you some concrete examples. So MBET, because of that kind of entrepreneurial piece, and then learning very quickly about, you know, what it means to be an entrepreneur versus an entrepreneur. Within engineering, especially, there's a lot of miniature projects or miniature startups that need to grow and evolve in what I'm doing. So I can take everything that I'm learning and break it out, which I really enjoy because it's I get to take my learning and then just repeat it. So it's a practiced and learned thing. But it's really a process that's easily applied entrepreneurially as well. So if I'm looking even at like a researcher, you can imagine a researcher who runs their research platform, which is a mini business in its own right? They need to connect to their client, and they need to advertise, and they need to market, and they need to manage a team. And those are all aspects that are easily aligned with what we learned throughout MBET. So that's kind of how I apply that. And
Yeah, it's an awesome, thank you for that example. Question has come through. I'm going to take a quick stab at one piece of it, but then I want to ask you folks. The question is, in MBET problem solving framework, is there any know-how technological component on top of the core modules, for example, elective courses on AI? So there are no elective courses. However, the T in the MBET is the letter that sometimes creates a, that isn't entirely clear when you're looking at the curriculum. So there's some courses that deal with technological, so for example, there's a course called Managing Technological Innovation. That's probably the most technically oriented course, but I wouldn't call it a technical skills course. It's really more about orientating you to technology organizations, or I sometimes describe the T as being like context. So if we think about entrepreneurship and business, the vast majority of that activity today is happening in a technological context. And so things that are being discussed in MBET are being discussed in that context. But I would think I've seen some heads nodding, so I'm obviously not totally off base, but I wonder, would anybody able to offer some examples of the technology piece of MBET, your exposure to it? I mean, of the group that's here today, Stephanie is really the only one coming in with a more technical background. So for you, Grace, for example, like what exposure to technology did you get through MBET? And if you could just even speak to sort of your level of awareness going into it versus where you are now in the program.
Sure. So I am not good with technology whatsoever. I am one of those people that can't even turn on a PlayStation properly, to be completely honest. Going into BET 608 specifically, there was a lot of opportunities learning more about AI and doing more of a kind of a deeper dive. Wayne really does a great job of kind of explaining some technical components and also allowing us to kind of explore that space a little bit more and really understanding how important technology is going to be in a venture, whether it is just having technology in your workspace or you're actually creating a software solution. So that's kind of been my main exposure. And then with managing technological innovation, picking a tech company and kind of picking apart what they've done and analyzing it in combination with BET 608 has been really a great opportunity for me to learn what really is AI and understand it more fully. And I can proudly say that I could probably turn on a PlayStation now. So it's in the right direction.
Thanks. So AI and blockchain tend to be two technologies that I often hear coming up from individuals through this process. And I hope you got a sense from Grace's response there that you get some exposure to these subjects, but you are not trained to be expert on them. Like you're not going to be trained to code machine learning. However, both through the course curriculum and informally at Waterloo, your opportunities to learn about these subjects are tremendous. So there's an Artificial Intelligence Research Institute at the University of Waterloo, one of less than a handful of federally funded artificial research institutes. There are all kinds of, open lectures and things like that that you can attend. I know some people come into the program specifically wanting to learn about particular technologies as they relate to MBET, and you are empowered to do so. It's just not part of the curriculum. So I'm thinking in particular of a student who is a full-time student who was really interested in learning more about the Internet of Things, or sort of this connected hardware landscape of digitally connected devices. Absolutely no background in it whatsoever. Ended up making his venture about that, and in the process of doing so, learned more about that technology, and is now actually trying to work towards working in that industry. So are you going to come to MBET and graduate a technical expert in some of these subjects? Absolutely not. Are you going to have the context and the knowledge and experiences to be able to know when you might want to use one technology versus another, what some of the limitations of these technologies are, how you would talk to someone who is a technical expert in your business? So if you're bringing on a CTO who's going to manage your technology, how you would talk to them. That's the kind of thing that you're going to learn as it relates to technologies. Anybody else have anything to add to that technology piece?
I just wanted to add that as it pertains to AI, there is actually a graduate student association specific to AI, of which MBET students are allowed to participate. They have like a coffee and coding Tuesday regularly at the grad house. So that's an opportunity to connect with those really technical students. The wonderful thing about them is they often really like to chat with people who have more softer or business skills. And you don't have to be a coder to go to those things, even though they're called coffee and coding. Anyway, so from that technical side, I've not, the program itself doesn't introduce you to a lot more or give you a deep dive, but there are opportunities throughout campus to get involved in those sorts of things if that's where your interests are.
Great. And thank you for that question. That was a great question. Okay, taking a quick look at the time, we're coming down to the last 10 minutes of our session. I want to ask each of the students who are here today, and maybe we'll start with Grace and then move our way across the screen. What advice would you give to somebody who's considering this program right now? So they've got some information, they're thinking about applying to the part-time MBET program. What advice would you give them?
So what advice I would give them is really take the opportunity to, go to some more information sessions, talk to more graduates or people that are thinking about going in, and just honestly reach out to us on LinkedIn if you have specific questions. We're more than happy to let you know what we think or share some of our experiences. Get to know the professors if you have those opportunities, but really just go in with an open mindset. Don't go in with certain expectations thinking, I know what this is going to be like, because it will change your perception on a lot of things. And if you go in with those mindsets, you'll do very well.
Great, that's good. Good advice. KP?
Don't be afraid to ask questions coming into it. And I think, come in with an open mind for sure of what you're going to achieve in there. I'm not saying that you're going to disappoint yourself if you're going to overthink it, but you don't know what you're going to miss if you overthink it. The other thing is, and I'll echo what Grace just said actually, is that reach out to any of the MBET alumni on LinkedIn. We're all open to adding anybody who's incoming and having that discussion. MBETs in general are a pretty close bunch. Whether you've actually met anybody or not, and they graduated even 10 years ago, they're open to having a discussion. So don't be afraid to do that.
Great advice. Thanks. Steph, tips?
My number one tip is 3 years goes faster than you think. I'm only in second year, but and that was a hesitation because it's like 1 year commitment or 3 years, but it has gone so fast. Yeah.
Good advice. Don't think about 3 years as being a long time. Good advice. Stephen, advice for future part-time MBET students.
Yes, I think that I like the steps because yeah, firstly, you can still have your full-time job no matter what type of business you're working on. You can start your business or work as somewhere else. But this kind of I like the embed is kind of provide opportunity for you to thinking that maybe that your business is not that far from you, and also I think that for the future MBET part-time students especially, you would like to, because MBET provide a very flexible courses, and if you really want to start something, you have to commit sometimes. It's like Stephanie said, it's a 3-year commitment, and yeah, and you want to making sure that you learn something actually from this, and there's a lot of resources to you. And if you cherish this and you want to have improve yourself, really want to get some knowledge and get more experience for your future, it's a very nice, very good, valuable investment for you.
And lastly, but not least, Vlad, advice for.
Yeah, I think just to echo what everyone said, I think it's really important to come with an open mind to the program and not necessarily have to think that you need to have a venture idea in mind, or you're on this 3-year timeline that you need to create a venture and execute the plan. It's more really about the journey, and Steph hit the nail right on the head. 3 years goes by pretty quickly, but the flexibility of the program and the part-time nature of, having class every 3 weeks and being able, for some people, family commitments, work and everything else, we can balance it because the program is flexible in that way. And I think it's a lot of, the skills and the courses that you learn throughout the program that could really help you on a career trajectory. Whether if you're taking a full-time, if you're in the full-time program and you want to have a competitive edge in the business development world or in the commercialization world, or if you're already currently working and you want to go into the managerial director level, the MBET is a great stepping stone for that. And it really, teaches you a lot of things about not just entrepreneurship, but business and technology itself. Like, in a number of courses, we've learned as to why technologies fail. And you don't necessarily have to be a technical expert in it, but going through these case studies, you realize why sometimes, an idea that so many people might think is great doesn't really come to fruition. And, a common example that I keep referring to is, one of our professors told us about, the electric cars. Back in, I think it was 2004, 2006, Chevrolet had an electrical vehicle. No one bought it. Tesla came around 8 years later, everyone's buying them. So where was that disconnect from, Chevrolet back in, 2005 to what Tesla did? So some of the courses really talk about, technological innovation and why some of them fail and why some of them don't. And I think learning about those experiences is invaluable, and it really does help. And personally, for me, on my professional career, it's been great. And my current job right now, MBET was a key component in me getting it, right? So it is a great program in that regard.
Awesome, thank you.
I just want to say one more thing, just to echo what Vlad's saying. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, when you're coming in here, you're coming in with an open mind, and you might take an existing product and improve on it. You might have an idea that you have, and you might not have an idea, and you come in there and all of a sudden you have 30, but they'll talk to you about feasibility, and the whole Conrad team and even extended University of Waterloo staff are there to help to guide you through any venture, any idea that you have. Whether you have the technical knowledge of how to do it or not, they'll work with you to make sure that if you can't learn it, that they have somebody available for you that can help with your venture.
Yeah. Awesome. It's really good to hear what you're saying. Our program director, Chris Holt, has been using an analogy lately to compare and contrast MBET to traditional graduate business programs that I think is really apt and really speaks to what you've shared with us about your experiences, which is that, a traditional graduate business program, like a traditional MBA program, is like an obstacle course. And if you get through the obstacle course, you get to the end and you win a prize. But MBET's like a sandbox, and it's up to you how much fun you have, what you build, who you invite into your sandbox with you, how long you stick around with it. It is about you. And I think another thing that I've heard from a lot of other students, both current and former, is this sort of aspect of transformation and the fact that it is a process. It's a personal journey. We are here to develop entrepreneurs and not companies per se. If you end up producing a company as a result, awesome. But it's about you and your journey and how you're going to grow and develop over the course of those 3 years based on what you learn on the classroom and the experiences that you have. So I just want to last call on questions to participants. We have about 3 minutes left. One of our guests has a hard stop here, so we're going to wrap up right at 7 o'clock. But if there are any other questions, happy to take them now. If not, we will go ahead and wrap up today's session. Okay, so far, no questions, just getting expressions of gratitude from our participants. So I will pick up from there and say, thank you so much, Grace, KP, Stephanie, Stephen, Vlad. I really, really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedules to talk to our audience today and share your experiences with us. I know I always learn every time I have one of these opportunities to hear from our students. Certainly working from home, it's been really nice seeing all of your faces. I don't get to see them as often anymore. Stay tuned, participants. You'll be getting a follow-up email from me tomorrow. Hopefully that link will include a link to a recording of today's session. And if you have any other questions, you can follow up with me from there. Otherwise, I will say thank you so much, and we're looking forward to receiving your applications. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Good luck.
Take care, everyone.